Hey everyone. Um, Quite honestly, this year, the job that pays the bills, which isn't the photography job, unfortunately, um, has consumed a very large part of my time. So I haven't been able to get out and get as many photographs done as I did, for example, last year. Plus, the forts had less events for me to go take pictures at. But it's now coming up on September, and I want everybody to start planning for fall. And you might say, why? It's only September. Okay. Again, we don't know what the trees are going to do, but you can look online and get some ideas of when the leaves are going to change. But if you, like I used to do for years, want to get a new lens, right? Rent something. Now is a good time to get those rental requests in so that you make sure that your rental is locked in for whatever time you now see is appropriate for you to attempt to do these landscape shots. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing a landscape for landscape itself or if you're just going to take advantage of it to do portraits with the landscape as a background. If you don't have the lens that you need, rent it. If you're looking for a tripod to use, rent it if you don't have it. There's a lot of really nice equipment out there that's really, really, really expensive. And if we're only going to use it for a couple times in the year, it does not make sense for you to lay out the money for it. I have a 100 to, I think it's a 100 to 400, basically a kit lens, right? It's a variable F lens. And that's what I tried one year to see what I thought about doing the photographs for landscape. And quite honestly, it did an okay job. It does an okay job for me doing other pictures as well, so I picked one up. That lens is $650. If I wanted a 400 millimeter fixed, that added another zero to the number. And they go up rather rapidly because, again, the smaller the F that you can go to means the glass is that much bigger, which makes the lens heavier, of course. But on the other side, it also means that the glass is the expense of the device. It's not just one piece of glass that you see, it's all the other pieces of the glass inside necessary to focus the lens. And then if you're talking about internal versus external focusing ones, so you're talking about one that is a fixed length at all times, or one that that gets longer or shorter depending on what you're zooming to, those make a difference as well. Basically, because if you've got a lens like this 100 to 400 that I have, it gets longer as I change out to the 400. That means that there's an exposed surface that can pick up dust and particles and anything else, and every time you use it back and forth, it runs the risk of damaging it a little bit more. It's an inexpensive lens. Like I said, I think it was like $650. So it's not a great expense for me if I need to replace it, and I try to keep it clean. But that is just something that's going to happen with those. So the ones that are internal focus are bigger, they're bulkier to carry because they are, it's the size it's always going to be. But on the other side of that, it means that everything is more protected inside. I believe those have a tendency to be on the more expensive end of the spectrum for that purpose, because it is a self-contained unit. It is bulkier and heavier to carry around. My 100 to 400, I hardly know I've got it on me. It's that light. As a matter of fact, it is lighter than my 2.8 24 to 70 that I've got. It's also a lot less. My 24 to 70 cost almost $3,000. Again, it's a 2.8 from 24 to 70. So when you're talking a 70 millimeter lens, 70 over 2.8, that's a lot of glass. So now is a good time to figure out what it is that you would want to use. And maybe it's something you will want to keep, but if you rent it now and try it out, you'll know. I rented a 2.8 24-70 before I bought mine because I was going to make an outlay of $3,000. That's a lot of money for me to outlay for a lens. And I wanted to make sure that I was going to be comfortable with it and I was going to be familiar with how it worked before it showed up. So I rented it for, I believe, a week. Did nothing but try it out. Same thing with my R5. I rented an R5 for a week. Try it out. See what I thought of it before I bought it so that I'd know if I was going to be comfortable using that device. So rent out what you want and what you need. The other thing is, if you're using something like an R5 that has that 100 megapixel capability to it, it needs to have a good solid tripod underneath it because the camera is going to be moving around internally. The internals of the camera are going to be shifting the focus so it can get that 100 megapixel out of what would normally be a 40, 45. So in order for that to happen, the camera can't move. And that means it's got to have a halfway decent tripod underneath it. The other thing you're going to need, and if you've got a tripod, you should already have it already. And if you're going to be using a tripod and you don't have one, you need to rent one. I recommend that you go buy one of these. I think they're about $40. It is a Bluetooth paired shutter release. All right. Now, some of us are old enough to remember what the cable ones looked like, where you had a long cable. The button that you used for the shutter was threaded. You would screw this device into there. It had a pin that came out of the back. So when you pushed on the plunger on the other end, you were just pushing a pin through the whole thing. And that pin is what pushed the button down. And they had a screw at the end so that you could push the plunger down and screw it into place. I used it a lot for astrophotography. Right, put the camera on the tripod, put this in place, screw it in there, and go. Just leave it be. Then they came out with electronic ones. My 60D had an electronic one that just plugged in, and you could set it, but it was cabled, right? Still, but you could set its exposure time and things like that. Just dial it up, hit the button, and walk away. But when you're doing portraits and other things where you want that 100 megapixel, which I don't recommend in a portrait because it's probably going to come out blurred. Nobody sits that still for as long as it needs to, which is a few seconds. Make sure that you have a shutter release of some kind. If you're going to be using a tripod, the reason you're using the tripod is to keep away vibration. The cables allowed a little bit of separation from vibration. You could, in theory, still cause a problem if you jerked on the cable by accident. But having this little button that you could just press means that you're removed from the camera. You're removed from the tripod. You could be removed from the area even that the tripod is sitting on. If you set it up, let's say, on a picnic table, for example. To get an extra height or for whatever reason, you've got your tripod set up, you can step away from the whole thing and click the button. You're not going to bump into the tripod leg. You're not going to have any issue with it because you can be further away from the camera and the tripod. And that's what you're going to need for that. Now, the photography that I have been doing hasn't been event. It's been more on terms of merchandise photography. As I've mentioned before, I have an Etsy shop. I've done some generative AI that I've turned into bookmarks. I've got some of my photographs that I've turned into bookmarks, and I've got a couple of other things that I put in there. Turning a photograph into a bookmark is a challenge. because you want it to be thicker than a normal bookmark would be. That's why I tends to do a little more with the generative stuff that's more black and whitish, because that can be much more flat. The other thing is any of my photographs that I turn into artwork, which when I have the time, I'll be getting back to putting that stuff up on Etsy, is going to be thicker. I've got a beautiful one that I did of a flower, and the flowers come out. So the advantage of these 3D prints is there is a three-dimensional piece to it. You can feel the flowers. You can see the flowers. The flowers rise out of the background, just as it would if you've got a good bokeh, and that's the thing that's sharp. It rises out of the image to meet your eyes. This literally rises out of the print. So doing that kind of photography, you're going to want to have a good tripod. As I said, the tripod that I just got allows me to take the head out and reverse it. So normal tripod, camera sits on top. When you're doing other photographs like merchandise, you may want the tripod to be over the merchandise, and that means the head has to be on the other side. So in this case, the entire arm comes out, that shaft to raise and lower. You flip it over, you put it on the other side, putting it back into the unit, and now your camera is directly over what it is that you're taking photographs of. Means differences for lighting and things like that, obviously, but it gives you that overhead image in a stable format. And again, you're going to want to have a trigger button so that you don't bump the camera. You're not doing anything on the camera at all. You're hitting the button. Even if you're doing a video, right? You got your camera set up for video. You've got the little button right there. You can just hit the button and record. You don't have to worry about going over to the camera and pushing the button on the camera and then walking back and then having to edit all that stuff out. You can literally be sitting there ready to give your pitch, or having the thing in front of you ready to show off what it is, and just hit the button when you're ready. Your hand doesn't even have to be in the frame when you do it, and nobody will even know what started it. Not that anybody would probably care. But that's another use for these Bluetoothed controls. And again, it's much easier than when we used to have to use the cables, because you don't have to worry about the cable. Your distances can become greater from the camera because the Bluetooth allows you that extra flexibility and freedom. So that's what I got for you guys this week. Get out there. Think about fall. If you're going to take leaf photographs, where do you want to do them? How do you want to do them? Are you going to be using it as a backdrop for some cool portrait photography, or are you just going to take some nice landscape shots? Go online for your area, see what the forecast is, and then go to some place like Lens Rental. And nope, I still don't get any money from those guys, even though I've pitched them for years here. But go to some place like Lens Rental, book your time, make sure that you get insurance on it so that it's not on your insurance if something happened to it. Just in case something happens to a lens while you're out, you fumble it, it falls out of your bag, anything happens to it, you're covered. Make sure you've got that coverage in place. Book your time for your lens. It usually shows up a day or two. It usually show up on the day of or the day before. Sometimes I've actually had it for an extra couple of days. Your end date always remains the same, even if it comes up early. And you're just it's going to come in a box with a solid case inside. So you can use that case to carry the lens around with you, or whatever it is that you're renting. And then when you get done, you're just going to put it all back in. Comes with its own tape, comes with its own packing label. You just slap the label and the tape on it and bring it back into usually FedEx. And FedEx takes care of it from there. And you're done. It's easy to take care of. It's easy to do this. And their rates are reasonable. Again, the more expensive the equipment that you want, the more it's going to cost you. They have a beautiful $16,000 lens in there that I would love to get my hands on and try out. It's several $100s a day, I believe, for rental for it, but it's not anything I would use more than maybe once or twice, so it doesn't make sense to buy it, but I would love to try it out and see some of the landscaping shots that I could get. Get your plan together. Figure out what it is you need to use. Figure out your tripods, your lenses, even a camera if you want to try a camera out for the fall. Get all that up there. Get it all in. Get your rentals in early. I recommend an early rental date because that way you've got more possibility of getting it and possibly even getting it early, depending on how the shipments come back in and if they've got how tight the overlap is from one order to the next. But get out there, have fun, and I'll talk to you all next week.